She offered her jacket to a freezing stranger at the bus stop, not knowing he was the vampire king who had once drowned kingdoms in blood and would soon trade eternity for her heart. The wind howled through the city like something wounded and wild, snow falling in thick curtains that swallowed streetlights and muffled the world into eerie silence. At a bus stop on the edge of the empty downtown district, beneath a flickering lamp that cast more shadow than light, Elena Carter stood clutching her daughter close, willing the delayed bus to appear. Lila slept against her shoulder, 6 years old and trusting, her stuffed bunny dangling from one small hand. Elena adjusted the child's weight, feeling the ache in her back from the double shift, the second job, the endless climb that never seemed to reach level ground. Her boots were worn through at the sole. She'd counted coins twice that evening just to afford the bus fare home. Then she saw him. A man sat slumped against the shelter's frosted glass, snow clinging to raven-black hair and bare skin. No coat. No shirt. Only dark trousers embroidered with strange silver patterns and leather boots that looked like they belonged in a museum, not on a frozen city sidewalk. His hands, pale, elegant, with fingers too long to seem quite human, trembled violently against his chest. Beneath wet strands of hair, his eyes flickered open. Red. Glowing faintly like dying embers, then dimming as if the light inside him was burning out. Elena's breath caught. Every instinct screamed danger. The wrongness of him, the unnatural stillness of his chest, the way snow seemed to avoid his skin as if repelled by something unseen. But he was freezing. Dying, maybe. And she couldn't look away. The wind shrieked. He flinched, curling inward like a wounded animal, and Elena felt something crack inside her chest. She'd seen that kind of suffering before, in hospital rooms, in mirrors, in the hollow eyes of people the world had stopped seeing. Her coat wasn't much. Threadbare at the elbows, bought secondhand 3 winters ago. But it was warm. And he was shivering so hard his teeth chattered audibly in the silence between gusts. She could keep walking. Stay silent. Protect her daughter from whatever strangeness radiated from this man like cold fire. But she didn't. Elena knelt before him, heart hammering against her ribs, and gently shook his shoulder. "Sir, you're freezing. Please take my coat." He lifted his gaze, and for a moment, she forgot how to breathe. Those red eyes focused on her face, as if seeing her across centuries, through layers of time and forgetting. His voice came hoarse and used, achingly beautiful. "You should not approach me, human. Humans." The words settled over her like ice water. Not ma'am. Not miss. Human, as if he were something else entirely. Behind her, Lila stirred, peeking around Elena's shoulder with sleepy curiosity. "Mommy? Is the man okay?" His eyes moved to the child, and Elena saw something impossible flicker across his face, sorrow so ancient it seemed to have weight, wonder so raw it looked like pain, and hunger restrained by sheer, trembling will. But instead of threatening, he bowed his head. Elena didn't hesitate. She unwrapped her coat from her own shoulders, feeling the cold bite immediately through her thin work shirt, and draped it around his shaking frame. Her fingers brushed his skin, colder than snow, colder than anything living should be, and she tucked the coat gently around him the way she'd tuck a blanket around Lila at bedtime. "It's all right," she whispered. "Everyone needs help sometimes." He stared at the coat as if it were some holy relic, then looked up at her with something breaking behind those otherworldly eyes. "Kindness," he breathed, as though tasting a word forgotten for centuries. I had forgotten its warmth. Snow fell harder. A distant car passed, headlights painting them both in brief, golden light. Then his eyes fluttered closed, and he vanished. Not gradually, not in a blur of motion, but like smoke scattered by sudden wind, fragments of shadow dissolving into the winter night, leaving nothing behind but Elena's coat folded neatly on the bench beside her. And resting on top of it, a silver pendant, a crown of thorns intertwined with spreading wings, etched in impossible detail. Elena grabbed the coat with shaking hands, the pendant sliding into her palm. It was warm. The metal hummed faintly against her skin like a living heartbeat. Lila tugged her sleeve. Mommy, where did he go? I don't know, baby. In the distance, the bus's headlights finally appeared through the snow. Elena clutched the pendant, her coat, her daughter. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what she'd seen, what she'd touched, what had looked at her with hunger and reverence, and something far more dangerous than either. The bus doors hissed open. The driver gave her an impatient look. Elena climbed aboard, Lila in her arms, the pendant burning like a secret against her palm. Through the frost-covered window, she stared back at the empty bus stop, searching for shadows that shouldn't move, for red eyes in the darkness. Nothing. But as the bus pulled away, she could have sworn she felt something watching, not with menace, but with presence. As if the night itself had learned her name. Elena didn't tell anyone what happened that night. How could she? Even as she tucked Lila into their small apartment's only bed an hour later, even as she hung the coat in the closet and hid the pendant in her nightstand drawer, she knew no one would believe her. A hallucination, they'd say. The stress. The exhaustion. The cold playing tricks on an overworked mind. But the pendant was real. The coat smelled different now, like winter forests and ancient stone and something else, something that made her pulse quicken for reasons she didn't want to examine. Elena stood at her bedroom window, staring out at the snow-covered city, and pressed her hand against the cold glass. You should not approach me, human. She should have been terrified. Should have thrown the pendant away, forgotten the whole encounter. Instead, she opened the drawer and looked at it again. The crown of thorns, the wings, the silver that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. Outside, something howled. Not a dog, not the wind, something else. Elena closed the drawer and locked her door, but sleep didn't come for a long time. And when it did, she dreamed of red eyes and ancient sorrow and hands colder than death reaching for her through endless snow. She didn't know it yet, but her life had already changed. The Vampire King had marked her, and he would return. Days passed, then a week. Life continued in its exhausting rhythm. Early shifts at the diner, late shifts at the convenience store, stolen moments with Lila in between. Elena moved through it all like a woman underwater, going through familiar motions while something inside her had fundamentally shifted. She told herself it was nothing. A strange encounter, nothing more. The city was full of them, but the pendant remained hidden in her nightstand drawer, and she checked it every night before bed, half expecting it to have disappeared. It never did. The silver crown of thorns glowed faintly in the darkness, pulsing with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. The strangeness started small. Streetlights flickered when she walked beneath them, plunging her into momentary darkness before surging back to life. Once, twice, then every single night. Elena told herself it was the city's aging infrastructure, but her skin prickled each time the light died and returned. At home, shadows moved wrong. She'd catch movement from the corner of her eye, darkness pooling in corners where no darkness should be, stretching along walls when nothing cast it. When she turned to look directly, everything appeared normal. But the feeling of being watched never left. "Mommy," Lila said one morning over cereal, swinging her small legs beneath the kitchen table. "The tall dark man was at my window again last night." Elena's spoon clattered against her bowl. "What?" "The one from the bus stop." Lila smiled, innocent and unconcerned. He was smiling. He looked sad but nice. Like he wants to say something but doesn't know how. Cold flooded Elena's veins. Their apartment was on the 3rd floor. "Lila, sweetheart, that was just a dream."
Nah.
He waved. Lila demonstrated with her small hand. "Like this." Then he went away like smoke. Elena checked the window 3 times that day. The locks held firm. There was no balcony, no fire escape within reach. Nothing. But that night, she wedged a chair against Lila's bedroom door anyway. On Thursday, Elena opened her closet to grab her coat for work and froze. The coat hung exactly where she'd left it, but it was different. The threadbare elbows had been mended with stitches, so fine they were nearly invisible. The lining, once torn and thin, had been replaced with black velvet that shimmered like liquid night. When she touched it, warmth radiated through her fingers as if the fabric itself held heat. It smelled of pine forests and cold stone, and something ancient she couldn't name. Beside it, pinned to the velvet with a silver thorn, was a note written in ink darker than dried blood. Your kindness has been acknowledged. No harm will touch you, or yours as long as I breathe. LD. Elena's hands shook as she read it again. And again. LD Lucian Draven. The name whispered through her thoughts like a half-remembered dream. She should have been terrified. Should have called the police, changed the locks, moved apartments. Instead, she carefully folded the note and hid it with the pendant. That evening, after putting Lila to bed, Elena sat at her laptop and searched. The silver crest, the crown of thorns with wings. She found nothing in modern databases, but buried in obscure history forums and occult websites, she found fragments. References to ancient vampire houses. Old European bloodlines. A symbol associated with the House of Draven. A royal line that supposedly died out centuries ago in blood and rebellion. Vampire. The word sat in her mind like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through everything she thought she knew about reality. The apartment building settled and creaked around her. Elena closed her laptop, suddenly aware of how late it had gotten, how dark the windows were, how the shadows in the corners seemed deeper than they should be. A sound outside. Footsteps on the balcony she didn't have. Elena stood slowly, pulse hammering. The footsteps continued, deliberate and unhurried. Then whispers, low and fluid, in a language she didn't recognize, but that made her skin prickle with inexplicable recognition. She grabbed her phone, fingers hovering over 911. The whispers stopped. Silence pressed against her ears. Then 3 slow knocks on the balcony door. Elena's breath came in short gasps. She crossed to the window, hand trembling as she reached for the curtain. Every instinct screamed not to look, to hide, to protect her daughter sleeping in the next room. But she pulled the curtain aside anyway. A man stood on her non-existent balcony, backlit by moonlight. Lucian. He looked different than that night at the bus stop, stronger, more solid, as though he'd drawn substance back into himself. His skin still held an unearthly pallor, but now it seemed carved from marble rather than ice. The same raven-black hair fell past his shoulders. The same red eyes glowed softly in the darkness, but brighter now, alive with ancient fire. He wore dark clothing that seemed woven from shadows themselves, and when he moved, the air around him rippled. Elena's hand pressed against the glass. His gaze met hers, and she saw recognition there, and something deeper, something that made her heart stutter. She unlocked the door with shaking fingers and slid it open. Cold night air rushed in, but Lucian didn't move. He remained perfectly still, watching her with an intensity that should have been threatening but felt instead like reverence. "You shouldn't be here," Elena whispered. "I know." His voice was smoother now, cultured, carrying centuries of refinement. "Forgive the intrusion." Then, to her shock, he knelt. On her balcony that shouldn't exist, the Vampire King, if that's what he truly was, lowered himself to one knee and bowed his head. "I came to thank you properly, Elena Carter. Your kindness saved more than you know. You gave warmth when I believed I would only ever feel cold again." How do you know my name?" "I know many things." He lifted his eyes to hers, and she saw sorrow there, ancient and heavy. "But I did not know kindness still existed in this world until you showed it freely, without reason or reward." The coat. Returned as it should be. Repaired. Protected. As you are now protected. "I didn't ask for protection." "No." The ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You asked for nothing. That is why you have everything." Elena's mind spun with 1,000 questions, but before she could voice any of them, Lucian rose fluidly to his feet. His form began to blur at the edges, darkness seeping into the spaces where he stood. "Wait. We will speak again," he promised, "when you are ready to hear the truth of what you've become entangled in. Until then, know that you are safe. You and the child. My word is absolute. I don't even know what you are." "Yes," he said softly. "You do." And then he was gone, dissolving into shadow and moonlight, leaving only the faint scent of winter forests and the echo of his voice in the cold air. Elena stood alone on the impossible balcony, gripping the doorframe to steady herself. Her breath fogged in the night. Below, the city continued its endless rhythm, oblivious to the impossible. She looked out at the empty space where he'd stood, at the darkness that had swallowed him whole, and whispered into the winter night. "Who are you?" Only silence answered. But somewhere in that silence, she could have sworn she heard her name carried on the wind, spoken with a tenderness that made her chest ache. Elena stepped back inside, locked the door, and leaned against it. Her coat hung in the closet, warm and protected. The pendant pulsed in her drawer. And a vampire king watched over her from shadows she couldn't see. Whether that made her safe or damned, she no longer knew. He returned 3 nights later. Elena was washing dishes, Lila already asleep, when the temperature in the apartment dropped so suddenly her breath misted in the air. The water in the sink stilled, steam freezing mid-rise. Every light in the apartment dimmed to near darkness. She turned slowly, dish soap still dripping from her hands. Lucian stood in her living room, not on the balcony this time. Inside, as if he'd simply materialized from the shadows pooling in the corners. But tonight he seemed fully restored, no longer the wounded stranger from the bus stop. He stood tall, easily over 6 feet, dressed in dark clothing that looked both ancient and timeless, a high-collared coat that fell to his knees, embroidered with silver patterns that matched his pendant. His red eyes blazed with quiet intensity, and when he moved, there was a predatory grace that made every instinct in Elena's body scream danger. Yet he stopped at a respectful distance and inclined his head with the formality of old royalty. "Forgive my intrusion, Elena Carter. We have much to discuss, and time grows short." Elena grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter, hand shaking. "Get out. I'll scream. You will do neither." His voice was calm, absolute. "Because you already know I mean you no harm. You have known since the moment you gave me your coat. I don't know anything about you. Then allow me to remedy that." He moved to her worn couch and sat with impossible grace, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Please. What I must tell you is that it is better to sit down." Elena didn't sit. She held the knife tighter. "Talk. Then leave." Something flickered in his expression, approval, perhaps at her defiance. "My name is Lucian Draven. I am, or was, depending on perspective, king of the vampire court. 3 weeks ago, my own council betrayed me. They poisoned my blood with silver and iron, substances that are to my kind what radiation is to yours. They left me to die in the snow, stripped of power, unable to feed or heal." He paused, and his gaze softened in a way that made Elena's chest tighten. "You found me at my lowest moment, when I had nothing left, when centuries of existence seemed ready to end on a frozen sidewalk, forgotten and alone. And you," his voice cracked slightly, "you gave me warmth, asked for nothing, expected nothing. Your kindness stirred a heart I believed had gone silent centuries ago. That's impossible. Vampires aren't real. And yet you don't sound convinced of that." He tilted his head. "You've researched the crest. You've felt the strangeness around you. You know the truth already, Elena. Your mind simply refuses to accept what your instincts have already understood." Before Elena could respond, the shadows in her apartment moved. 3 figures emerged from darkness itself, tall, imposing men who appeared as if stepping through torn fabric in reality. Elena gasped, backing against the counter, knife raised. "Peace," Lucian said quietly, raising one hand. "These are my guards. They have protected you from the shadows since that night. The first was massive, built like a warrior, with silver-streaked dark hair and scars crossing his stern face. The second was leaner, pale-haired with eyes like chips of ice and a calculating expression. The third seemed youngest, though still ancient, with auburn hair and a face too beautiful to be entirely human. All three wore dark armor that seemed forged from midnight itself. Varric, Lucian indicated the scarred warrior. Silas, the ice-eyed strategist. And Erevan, the auburn-haired one who offered Elena a slight, almost apologetic bow. "We are the Royal Guard," Varric said, his voice like gravel. "And you, Elena Carter, are under our king's protection. The signet of claiming marks you as such." "The pendant," Silas added, his sharp gaze moving to her nightstand in the other room as if he could see through walls. "Once given, it binds. You carry Lucian's mark now. All vampires who catch your scent will know you belong to the Night Court." "Belong?" Elena's voice rose. "I don't belong to anyone. I never asked for this. I just gave a man my coat because he looked like he was dying." "I was dying," Lucian said quietly, standing now. "And your compassion saved me. But that compassion has consequences in my world. Other vampires, those who seek my throne, those who hunt what is mine, they will come for you. Not to hurt you, but to use you against me." Terror flooded Elena's veins. "My daughter is safe. I swear it on my immortal existence." Lucian's voice carried absolute conviction. "No harm will touch her while I breathe. But you must understand the gravity of what has happened. You are bound to me now, whether by fate or chance. And my world has noticed." A sound from the hallway, small footsteps. Elena's heart seized. Lila appeared in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes, her stuffed bunny dragging behind her. She looked at the four imposing figures in her living room with the fearless curiosity of childhood. "It's you," she said to Lucian, smiling. "The sad man from outside my window." Lucian's expression transformed into something Elena had never seen: vulnerability, wonder, pain. He lowered himself slowly to one knee, bringing himself to the child's eye level. "Hello, little one," he said softly. "I am sorry if I frightened you." Lila walked right up to him, completely unafraid, and reached out to touch his pale cheek. The three guards tensed, hands moving to weapons, but Lucian raised a hand to still them. "You're really cold," Lila observed. "Like winter. But nice winter. Like when Mommy makes hot chocolate and we watch the snow." Something cracked in Lucian's carefully controlled expression. His eyes glistened with what might have been tears, if vampires could cry. "You are very brave," he whispered, "and very kind, like your mother. Lila, come here. Now." Elena's voice was steel, maternal instinct overriding fear. Lila obeyed, and Elena pulled her daughter behind her, positioning herself between Lila and the vampires. "I want you gone," Elena said, voice shaking but firm. "All of you. Stay away from my daughter. Whatever this is, whatever I've gotten tangled in, leave her out of it." Lucian rose gracefully, and for a moment, he looked truly ancient. "Weary. I cannot. She is part of you. What protects you protects her. I will honor your wish for distance, Elena Carter. But know this. Other vampires will smell the signet's bond on you. They will come. And when they do, you will need me. I'll take my chances." "Will you take chances with her life as well?" Silas asked coldly. Lucian silenced him with a look. "We will remain in the shadows. Watching. Guarding. You will not see us, but we will be there. Should you need us," he gestured, and a small silver bell appeared on her kitchen counter. "Ring this. We will come." "I won't." "Perhaps not." Lucian moved toward the balcony door, his guards dissolving back into shadow. He paused, looking back one last time. "But you might, when the alternative is losing everything you love." The temperature returned to normal. The lights brightened, and Elena stood alone with Lila clinging to her legs. Outside, somewhere in the winter night, something shrieked. High, inhuman, hungry. Elena grabbed Lila and ran to lock every window, every door. The silver bell sat on her counter, gleaming in the lamplight. And in the darkness beyond her windows, red eyes watched. Elena tried to return to normal life. She dropped Lila at school, worked her shifts, and came home exhausted. She told herself the encounter with Lucian and his guards had been some kind of elaborate hallucination brought on by stress and sleep deprivation. But the silver bell remained on her counter, and normal life was becoming impossible. It started small, a figure in her peripheral vision that vanished when she turned. Footsteps matching her pace on empty streets. The sensation of being watched that raised every hair on her body. Thursday evening, walking home from the convenience store through the shortcut behind the old church, Elena heard them, footsteps, deliberate and unhurried, echoing her own. She quickened her pace. The footsteps quickened too. Her heart hammered. The street was empty, streetlights flickering as she passed beneath them. She broke into a run, her worn boots slipping on patches of ice. The footsteps behind her accelerated, no longer bothering with pretense. Elena burst onto a main street just as a taxi passed. She flagged it desperately, dove inside, and didn't look back until they were 6 blocks away. When she finally dared to glance through the rear window, a tall figure stood beneath the flickering streetlight, watching her disappear. At work the next day, Sarah from the morning shift noticed. "You okay? You look like you haven't slept in a week." "I'm fine," Elena lied, dropping a plate that shattered across the diner floor. "That's the 3rd one this shift." Sarah helped her clean up, lowering her voice. "Whatever's going on, you can talk to me. You know that, right?" Elena wanted to say that she was being hunted by things that shouldn't exist, that a vampire king had claimed her as his responsibility, that she was terrified for her daughter's life. Instead, she just nodded. Sarah squeezed her shoulder. "I walk home the same direction you do. Want company tonight?" Relief flooded through Elena. "Yes, please." But Sarah never came. When her shift ended, Elena waited 20 minutes in the break room. Sarah's coat was gone, her locker cleaned out. The manager said she'd left early and said she wasn't feeling well. Elena walked home alone through streets that felt like they were closing in around her. Sarah didn't answer her phone that night, or the next day. By Monday, the manager had hired someone new and no one seemed to remember Sarah had ever existed at all. That night, as Elena locked her apartment door and checked on Lila sleeping peacefully, she felt the temperature drop. Lucian materialized on her balcony, a shadow taking form. This time, Elena opened the door without being asked. "You know," she said quietly, so as not to wake Lila. "Don't you? I know your coworker followed you home. I know she was intercepted 3 blocks from here by a vampire named Matthias, one of my council's assassins. She is alive, but her memory has been altered. She believes she moved to another city, for family reasons." His red eyes held hers. "She is lucky. Most are not." Elena sagged against the doorframe. "This is really happening." "Yes. And it's because of that pendant. Because of your kindness. The pendant is merely a symbol." He paused. "I am sorry, Elena. I never wished to bring danger to your door. But you did. I did." They stood in silence, the winter wind howling between them. Finally, Elena stepped aside. "You might as well come in. It's freezing out there. Not that you'd notice." Something almost like a smile touched his lips. "I notice." Over the following nights, Lucian came regularly. Always after Lila was asleep. Always staying at a respectful distance. Always gone before dawn. He never entered without invitation. Never touched her without permission. Never spoke of claiming or ownership. Instead, they talked. Elena told him about her daughter, about working 2 jobs to keep them afloat, about nights spent terrified she couldn't give Lila the life she deserved. She told him about loneliness that felt like drowning, about being invisible to a world that only saw another struggling single mother. "You are not invisible," Lucian said quietly one night, standing by her window overlooking the city. "Not to her. And not to me." In return, Lucian shared fragments of his past, centuries condensed into careful words. Wars fought in the name of kings who turned to dust. Kingdoms that rose and fell while he remained unchanged. The weight of immortality, watching everyone he'd ever cared for age and die while he stayed frozen in time. "After the first few centuries, I stopped caring," he admitted, his voice distant. "It hurt less. Feeling nothing. Being nothing but what they made me, a king, a weapon, a symbol. I forgot what it meant to be moved by something as simple as kindness. Until a freezing woman gave you a coat. Until a freezing woman gave me hope." Their eyes met, and Elena felt something shift in the air between them. Fragile, dangerous, undeniable. "This is insane," she whispered. "You're not even human." "No," he agreed. "But you make me wish I still was." The chemistry built slowly, a pull neither acknowledged but both felt. The way his gaze lingered when she smiled. The way her heart raced when his presence filled the room. The careful distance they maintained that somehow felt more intimate than touch. 2 weeks passed in this strange new rhythm. Elena working, caring for Lila, living in the ordinary world while the extraordinary watched over her from shadows. She almost convinced herself they could continue this way indefinitely. Then she came home to find her apartment door hanging open. Terror seized her. "Lila." Elena ran inside. Furniture overturned, cushions shredded, lamps shattered. Claw marks gouged the walls. The air reeked of something metallic and wrong. "Lila." Her voice cracked with panic. A small sob from the closet. Elena tore it open and found her daughter huddled in the corner, tears streaming down her face, clutching her stuffed bunny. "Baby, what happened?" "Red eyes," Lila whimpered. "The man with red eyes. Not the nice one. A mean one." "He said," she sobbed harder. "He said he could smell you on me." Ice flooded Elena's veins. She pulled Lila into her arms just as the temperature plummeted. Lucian appeared in the center of her destroyed living room. But this wasn't the composed king who visited her nights. This was something ancient and terrible. His eyes blazed like crimson suns, shadows writhing around him like living smoke, darkness rippling from his form in waves that made the air itself seem to crack. "Where?" His voice was barely human, resonant with centuries of fury. A figure dropped from the ceiling, a vampire with wild eyes and bared fangs, hissing. Lucian moved faster than Elena's eyes could follow. One moment the intruder was lunging toward them, the next Lucian had him by the throat, lifted off the ground, shadows coiling around them both like serpents. "You dared," Lucian said, voice deadly quiet. "You dared enter what is under my protection." The vampire tried to speak, but Lucian's grip tightened. Bones cracked audibly. "No words will save you." With a gesture almost casual, Lucian's free hand ignited with black flames. The vampire shrieked as the fire consumed him from the inside out, burning him to ash in seconds. The remains scattered across Elena's floor, then dissolved into nothing. Silence fell, broken only by Lila's quiet crying. Lucian turned to them, and Elena saw something in his expression that terrified and comforted her simultaneously. Absolute, unwavering protection fueled by barely controlled rage. "They know you carry my crest," he said, his voice returning to its normal cadence, but no less grave. "My enemies have found you. This apartment is no longer safe. Neither is this city." "What are you saying?" Lucian's red eyes held hers with terrible intensity. "Pack what you need. Only essentials. I can't just leave." "You must." He moved closer, and she saw something desperate beneath his regal composure. "They will come again. More of them. Stronger. And next time, I may not arrive in time." Elena looked at her destroyed home, at her terrified daughter, at the ash staining her floor where something inhuman had died. "Where would we even go?" Somewhere they cannot follow without declaring open war. Somewhere my power is absolute. He extended his hand toward her. Elena Carter, I am asking you to trust me. To trust the man you saved. Let me save you in return. Outside, something howled. Multiple voices this time, circling, hunting. Lucian's expression darkened. They're already here. Elena clutched Lila tighter and met his burning gaze. Then we run. They left through the balcony that shouldn't exist. Varric caught Elena as she stepped into empty air, his massive arms steadying her with surprising gentleness. Silas lifted Lila as if she weighed nothing, the child's tears finally quieting against his cold shoulder. Aravan moved ahead, scouting, his form blurring between solid and shadow. Lucian led them across rooftops and through alleys that seemed to bend reality itself. The city fell away behind them, replaced by forest paths that appeared only when Lucian walked them, trees parting like curtains to reveal roads that shouldn't exist on any map. Where are we going? Elena whispered, breathless. Home, Lucian answered. Mine. And now yours. They walked for what felt like hours through woods bathed in perpetual moonlight, though Elena's watch insisted only minutes had passed. The laws of the ordinary world no longer applied here. Time moved strangely. Distance meant nothing. Then the trees opened onto an abandoned cathedral, its Gothic spires crumbling against a star-filled sky. Lucian placed his hand on the weathered doors. They swung open silently, and the world shifted. The ruins dissolved like mist, revealing towering castle gates forged from black iron and silver, carved with the same thorned crown that marked Elena's pendant. Torches burned with flames that cast no heat, only cold blue light. Beyond the gates stretched a realm that stole Elena's breath, a vast fortress of moonlit stone, beautiful and terrible, ancient beyond measure. Welcome, Lucian said quietly, to the vampire court. They passed through gates that recognized their king, into courtyards where fountains flowed with water that glittered like liquid starlight. Vampires emerged from shadows. Some bowed deeply as Lucian passed, others stared at Elena and Lila with eyes that burned with hunger, curiosity, or barely concealed disgust. A human, someone hissed, in the sacred halls. Under the king's protection, Varric growled back, hand moving to his sword. Elena held Lila closer, feeling dozens of predatory gazes tracking their movement through corridors lined with tapestries depicting centuries of bloodshed and glory. Whispers followed them like smoke. They entered a great hall where vampires in elaborate court dress gathered, nobles with faces too perfect to be mortal, wearing silks and velvets from every era of human history. All conversation stopped as Lucian strode through with Elena at his side. A woman stepped forward, impossibly beautiful with silver-white hair and eyes like polished obsidian. Her gown seemed woven from shadows themselves, and when she moved, the air around her rippled with barely contained power. "My Lord King," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You bring a human into our midst. How unprecedented." Lady Seraphine. Lucian's tone carried a warning. "This woman and her child are under my personal protection. They will be treated with respect due to royal guests." Seraphine's smile was all teeth. "Of course. Though one wonders if the prophecy has made you reckless. A mortal woman of compassion who saves a fallen king. Yes, we've all heard the ancient words. But prophecies are often misinterpreted. Perhaps she's not your salvation, but your doom. That is not your concern. It is when you risk our entire kingdom for." Her gaze raked over Elena with contempt. "A fragile human who will be dust in the blink of our eternal eyes." "Enough." Lucian's voice cracked like thunder. Shadows erupted around him, and every vampire in the hall took an involuntary step back. "She saved my life when your council tried to end it. Or have you forgotten your own role in that betrayal, Seraphine?" The hall fell silent, tension thick enough to choke on. Seraphine's expression darkened, but she bowed stiffly. "As you command, my king." though command cannot change what many of us think. A human does not belong here, especially one who carries your signet. Her eyes found Elena's. For your sake and the child's, I hope you survive what's coming. She swept away, and half the court followed, their gazes promising violence barely restrained by their king's decree. Lucian turned to Varric. Take them to the eastern tower. Post guards at every entrance. No one enters without my express permission. My king, Varric bowed, then led Elena and Lila through more twisting corridors to a tower room that was somehow both fortress and sanctuary, stone walls softened by tapestries, a fireplace burning with those strange cold flames, and windows overlooking the moonlit realm. You'll be safe here, Erevan promised, his auburn eyes kind. We guard this door with our lives. After they left, Elena finally let herself collapse into a chair, Lila curled in her lap. What had she done? Fled into a world of monsters to escape monsters, trusting a vampire king who inspired both devotion and deadly resentment. Hours passed. Lila finally slept in the massive bed, and Elena stood at the window watching the impossible realm spread below, wondering if she'd ever see the ordinary world again. A soft knock. Elena opened the door to find Lucian standing in the corridor, and her breath caught. His regal composure had cracked. Blood, dark and wrong, stained his collar. His face was drawn, pale even for him, and his hand pressed against his side where his coat was torn. Lucian. A small matter, he said, but his voice was strained. Council loyalists who thought tonight would be opportune for another assassination attempt. They were mistaken. He swayed slightly, and Elena caught his arm without thinking. He was cold as always, but trembling. You're hurt. It will heal. Not if you collapse first. Come inside. She guided him to a chair by the fire, ignoring his weak protests. His wound was visible now. A silver blade had pierced his side, the edges still smoking with poison. Silver, he explained. It doesn't kill us quickly, but it burns. Elena found water and cloth, kneeling before him just as she had that snowy night at the bus stop. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, trust, something deeper neither dared name. You don't have to do this, he whispered. Yes, Elena said softly, carefully cleaning the wound as he hissed in pain. I do. You saved us tonight. Let me save you back. His hand covered hers, cold fingers gentle against her warm skin. You already did. The moment you offered a stranger your coat. Outside the tower, the vampire court schemed and whispered. But in this room, two souls bound by impossible circumstances sat together in the firelight, mortal and immortal, human and monster, connected by the simplest and most powerful force in any world. Kindness. In the days that followed, Elena learned to navigate the vampire court's dangerous beauty. Lila adjusted with the resilience of childhood, treating the ancient fortress like a grand adventure. She wandered the moonlit gardens with Erevan, who taught her the names of night-blooming flowers. She sat with Silas in the library while he read her stories from books older than nations. But it was Varric, the scarred warrior who seemed carved from stone, who surprised Elena most. She found them one afternoon in the training courtyard, Lila perched on Varric's massive shoulders, giggling as he showed her how the guards practiced, his stern face softened into something almost gentle. Again, Lila demanded, and the immortal warrior who'd fought in countless wars actually smiled. Your daughter has conquered what armies could not, Lucian said quietly, appearing beside Elena. She's made Varric remember what it means to be gentle. She has that effect on people. So does her mother. Elena's breath caught as his gaze held hers. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Lila's laughter echo through centuries-old stone. You asked me once what I was, Lucian said finally. I told you the truth. I am a vampire, a king and immortal. But I didn't tell you what I had become over the centuries. Empty. Cold. I ruled because it was expected, fought because it was necessary, existed because I didn't know how to stop. For so long, I believed I was incapable of feeling anything beyond duty. He turned to her, and vulnerability flickered in those ancient eyes. Then you wrapped a coat around my shoulders and reminded me what warmth felt like. You didn't see a king or a monster. You saw someone suffering and chose compassion. In that moment, you rekindled something I thought centuries dead. My humanity. Elena's heart thundered. Lucian. I do not expect you to feel anything in return, he continued quickly. You are here because I failed to keep you safe in your world. But you should know you have changed me, Elena Carter. Perhaps that is a prophecy, or perhaps it is simply the truth. She wanted to tell him she felt it too, that pull toward him that defied logic, that made her heart race when he entered a room, that filled her with equal parts fear and longing. But the words caught in her throat. Before she could find them, a servant appeared. My Lord King, the court has convened. They demand an audience with humans. Lucian's expression darkened. It begins. The throne room was packed with vampire aristocracy, their ancient faces cold with judgment. Elena stood in the center of their circle, feeling their predatory gazes like physical weight. Lila remained with the guards. Elena had insisted. Lady Seraphine stood at the forefront, resplendent in crimson silk. The question before this court is simple. Should a mortal be permitted to carry the royal signet? To be marked as the king's companion? Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some nodded. Most looked disgusted. She is human, a male vampire said, his voice dripping with contempt. Weak. Temporary. Unworthy of such honor. She will die in decades, another added. While our king endures eternally. It is madness to bind himself to mortality. Perhaps she should be turned, Seraphine suggested, her smile venomous. Made immortal, then she might be worthy of the signet she carries. Or would you prefer she remain fragile? My king? Breakable? Elena's hands clenched. They spoke about her as if she weren't there, as if she were property to be debated. Enough. Lucian's voice cracked through the hall like thunder. He rose from his throne, shadows swirling around him, and descended the steps with lethal grace. When he reached Elena, he placed himself between her and the court. Elena Carter carries my signet because I gave it freely. She is under my claim, my protection, he paused, and his next words fell like a blade. Devotion. Any who challenged this challenged me directly. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The court erupted in whispers. You cannot be serious, Seraphine breathed. A claim of devotion? For a human. I am your king. I need to explain nothing. His red eyes swept the assembly with absolute authority. This matter is closed. The court had no choice but to bow, but Elena saw the fury in their faces, the schemes already forming behind ancient eyes. That night, Elena confronted him in the corridor outside her tower room. I won't be owned, she said, voice shaking with anger. Not by you, not by anyone. I didn't ask to be claimed. You misunderstand. Lucian's expression was painful. Claiming in our world means protection, not ownership. It declares that harm to you is harm to me. It is the only way to keep you safe from those who would use you against me. And the devotion part? He was silent for a long moment. That was the truth. I should not have spoken aloud. But I will not take it back. Her anger faltered. This is insane. We barely know each other. I know you gave everything to save your daughter. I know you work until exhaustion and still find kindness for strangers. I know you are stronger than any immortal in that throne room because you face each day knowing it is finite and precious. He stepped closer, and Elena's breath caught. I have existed for centuries, but I did not live until you reminded me how. Lucian, I ask nothing of you, Elena. The choice has always been yours. Stay as you are, mortal, human, free. Or leave entirely if you wish. I would let you go if it meant your happiness. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. But I cannot stop feeling what you've awakened in me. They stood inches apart, tension crackling in the air between them. His hand rose slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and gently touched her face. His fingers were cold, but his touch was reverent. Elena's eyes closed. Her heart warred with her mind. This was impossible, dangerous, insane. But when had anything about her life been safe or sensible? She leaned forward, and he met her halfway. Their lips were a breath apart when the alarm bells shattered the moment. Lucian jerked back, his entire body going rigid.
No.
Varric burst into the corridor, armor rattling. My king. The eastern borders. Enemy forces have breached the wards. It's a full assault. Lucian's expression transformed from tender to lethal in an instant. How many? At least 50. Maybe more. They're coming for her. His red eyes met Elena's, and she saw fear there. Not for himself, but for her. Get to the tower. Lock the doors. Do not open them for anyone but me or my guards. What about you? I'm going to remind my enemies why I am king. Then he was gone, dissolving into shadow, leaving Elena standing in the corridor as alarm bells echoed through the ancient fortress and war descended upon them all. The castle shook with the impact of dark magic slamming against ancient wards. Elena ran to the tower, grabbed Lila from her bed, and was met by Varric's grim face. No time. They've breached the eastern gate. We will evacuate now. Silas and Erevan flanked them as they fled through hidden passages, down spiraling stairs that seemed to go on forever. They emerged into the forest beyond the castle walls just as explosions of shadow and flame lit the sky behind them. Snow fell thick and fast, muffling sound, turning the world into a maze of white and darkness. Lila clung to Elena's neck, silent and terrified. Keep moving, Erevan urged, scouting ahead. There's a safe house 2 miles. He never finished. Figures dropped from the trees, vampires with eyes burning gold instead of red, wearing armor marked with a crimson serpent. The Bloodborne clan, Varric snarled, drawing his sword. Protect the human. Chaos erupted. Silas moved like death itself, his blades singing as it cut through attackers. Erevan's daggers found throats and hearts with lethal precision. But more kept coming, surrounding them, cutting off escape. A vampire lunged for Lila. Varric threw himself between them, taking claws across his chest that tore through armor and flesh. He roared in pain but didn't fall, swinging his massive sword in an arc that forced the attacker back. Varric. Elena screamed. Run. Blood poured from his wounds, black and smoking. Take the child and... 3 more vampires closed in. Silas was pinned down fighting 4 others. Erevan engaged 2 more at the perimeter. They were outnumbered, overwhelmed. Elena saw it in their eyes. The guards would die to protect her and Lila. Noble, loyal, feudal. She couldn't let that happen. Here, Elena shouted, stepping away from Varric's protection, waving her arms. I'm the one you want. The king's claimed human. Come get me. Every enemy eye locked onto her. They surged forward like a wave, and Elena ran. Not away from her daughter, but in a wide arc, drawing them away, leading them toward a ravine she'd glimpsed through the trees. Elena, no. Silas's voice was desperate, but it worked. The assassins followed her, sensing easy prey. Elena ran faster than she'd ever run, her lungs burning, Lila's distant crying cutting through her like knives. She reached the ravine's edge and spun to face them. The lead vampire grinned, fangs bared. Foolish human. Did you think? A shadow erupted from the ground between them. Varric, bleeding and furious, slammed into the vampires with renewed strength. Silas appeared at Elena's side, pulling her back from the edge. Erevan's arrows, tipped with silver, rained from above. The tide turned. The guards fought with desperate ferocity, and slowly, impossibly, the attackers fell. But Elena heard it, the greater battle raging at the castle. Thunder without sound, light that burned cold. And through the snowstorm, she saw him. Lucian stood atop the castle ramparts, shadows swirling around him like a living storm. He faced a vampire lord in golden armor, tall, ancient, radiating power that made the air itself ripple. Matthias, Varric spat, seeing him too. The council's champion. They fought with speed that blurred reality. Blades clashed, magic exploded, and the very sky seemed to tear. Lucian was magnificent, power incarnate, the vampire king in his full terrible glory. But Matthias was winning. Elena saw it in the way Lucian's movement slowed, in how each blocked strike pushed him back. Silver poisoning from his earlier wound. It hadn't healed. He was fighting at half strength, exhaustion cracking his immortal endurance. Matthias's blade found its mark, piercing Lucian's shoulder, then his side, then his chest. No! Elena's scream tore from her throat. Lucian collapsed to his knees in the snow. Matthias raised his sword for the killing blow, and vanished in an explosion of darkness. Lucian had used the last of his power in one devastating strike, turning Matthias to ash. But the cost was clear. He swayed, then fell forward into the snow that had started this whole impossible story. Elena ran. Silas shouted for her to stop, but she didn't care. She ran through the forest, past the castle gates, up the blood-stained steps to where Lucian lay motionless in the crimson-stained snow. She dropped to her knees beside him, rolling him over. His eyes flickered open, dim, fading. Elena! His voice was barely audible. You're safe. I'm here. You're going to be fine. Don't lie. Blood leaked from his lips, black as night. Silver in my heart. I'm dying. No. No, there has to be a way. Varric limped up behind her, Lilo in his arms. There is one way, if she offers her blood freely. A true bond of willing sacrifice. It would heal him. Then tell me how. It would bind your souls, Silas said quietly, appearing through the snow. Forever. You would be tied to him across lifetimes. Feel what he feels. Your life force connected to his immortal one. There's no undoing it. Elena looked down at Lucian, at this impossible man who'd protected her, cherished her, fought armies for her, who'd reminded her what it meant to be seen, who'd awakened something in her heart she thought had died long ago. His eyes met hers, and even dying, he smiled softly. Don't, he whispered. You deserve freedom. Let me go. After everything? Tears streamed down Elena's face. After you showed me I was worth protecting? Does kindness matter? That someone could look at me and see more than a struggling single mother barely surviving. She looked at Lila, safe in Varric's arms. At the guards who'd nearly died for them. At the vampire king who'd declared his devotion before his entire court. Fear warred with love in her heart. This would change everything. Bind her to darkness, to immortality, to a world she barely understood. But when had she ever chosen the safe path? When had she ever chosen her safely? Elena lifted her wrist to her own teeth, biting down until blood welled up. Lucian's eyes widened in shock and protest. She pressed her bleeding wrist to his lips and whispered, "Live. For us." The world held its breath. For a heartbeat, Lucian didn't move. His eyes searched hers, seeing the certainty there, the choice freely made. Then his hand came up to cradle her wrist with infinite gentleness, and his fangs pierced her skin. Elena gasped, not from pain, there was none, but from the sensation that flooded through her. It felt like falling and flying simultaneously, like ice and fire merging into something entirely new. Sacred. Sensual. Devastating. The bond ignited. Magic erupted from where they touched, a shockwave of silver and shadow that exploded outward in concentric rings. The snow around them vaporized. The very air crackled with power as ancient forces recognized what was happening, a willing blood oath between mortal and immortal, sealed by love freely given. Lucian's wounds began to close. The silver poison burned away, consumed by the life force pouring from Elena into him. His eyes blazed crimson, brighter than she'd ever seen, and when he finally released her wrist, he was transformed. He rose to his feet in one fluid motion, power radiating from him in waves that made even his own guards step back in awe. This wasn't just healing. This was rebirth. The bond had amplified his strength tenfold, drawing on the courage and compassion that made Elena who she was. The remaining enemy vampires who'd survived the initial battle took one look at him and fled. Those too slow to run fell to their knees in terror. "Your king has returned." Lucian's voice resonated with authority that shook the castle foundations. "And I am done with mercy." Shadows exploded from him, seeking out traitors hiding in the fortress. Some surrendered immediately. Others tried to fight and were reduced to ash before they could raise their weapons. Within minutes, the rebellion was crushed absolutely. But Elena barely registered the victory. She was on her knees in the snow, overwhelmed by sensations that weren't her own. She felt Lucian's rage at his enemies, his fierce protectiveness toward her and Lila, his relief, joy, and beneath it all, love so profound it made her chest ache. "I can't hear you," she thought, and somehow knew he heard her too. Lucian was at her side instantly, lifting her with arms that trembled despite their strength. "Elena, what have you done?" "Saved you," she whispered. "Like you saved us. You bound yourself to me. Forever. Do you understand what that means?" She looked up at him, seeing him with new clarity, not just what he showed the world, but what he felt. Centuries of loneliness, the weight of immortality, and burning through it all, love for her that was absolute, eternal, terrifying in its intensity. "I understand," she said. "I feel it. All of it." His control shattered. He pulled her against him, burying his face in her hair. "I love you," he whispered, the forbidden words finally spoken without walls between them. "I have loved you since you offered warmth to a dying stranger. I will love you until the stars go cold." Elena's tears froze on her cheeks in the winter air. "This is insane. I'm human. Mortal. I'll age while you stay frozen in time. Not if you choose otherwise." He pulled back, cupping her face in his cold hands. "The bond has already begun changing you. Slowly. But you have a choice. Remain as you are, mortal but protected, our souls connected but your human life your own. Or accept the transformation fully. Become immortal. Become." He hesitated. "Become my queen." The weight of that choice threatened to crush her. Stay human and watch Lila grow old while she remains bound to an immortal? Or accept darkness, give up her humanity, step fully into this impossible world? "I need time," she whispered. "You have it. Whatever you choose, I am yours." A small voice cut through the moment. "Mommy?" Lila stood with Varric, her wide eyes taking in the destroyed courtyard, the ash-stained snow, her mother in the vampire king's arms. Elena pulled away from Lucian and knelt before her daughter. "It's okay, baby. Everything's okay now." Lila looked at Lucian with that unsettling wisdom children sometimes possess. "You're not dying anymore." "No, little one. Thanks to your mother." "Good." Lila smiled, then held out her small hand to him. "Can you make sure the bad vampires don't come back?" Lucian looked at Elena, asking silent permission. At her nod, he knelt and took Lila's tiny hand in his. "I can do better than that. I can ensure you are protected always, recognized by all vampires as sacred." His eyes glowed softly. "May I give you a blessing, Lila? It won't hurt. It will simply mark you as under royal protection, as heir to this court safety." Elena's heart clenched, but she nodded. This was the price of their new world. Lila would be part of it too. Lucian pressed his thumb gently to Lila's palm. Light flared, silver white and beautiful, and when he pulled away, a mark remained on her skin. A crescent moon intertwined with a small crown, glowing softly before fading to a silvery scar. "No vampire will ever harm you," Lucian promised. "You are marked as a protected heir." Neither fully mortal nor fully immortal, but destined for both worlds. Lila examined her hand with wonder. It's pretty. Despite everything, Elena laughed through her tears. But the court had gathered, drawn by the magical surge. Lady Seraphine stood at their forefront, her expression unreadable. A blood oath, she said quietly. Freely given. The prophecy was fulfilled. She stepped forward and, to Elena's shock, knelt. The court acknowledges what has been done, but acknowledgement is not acceptance. What does that mean? Elena asked. It means, Lucian said gravely, you must face the ritual of recognition, the ancient test to determine if a mortal is worthy to stand beside our king. It has not been invoked in 5 centuries. And if I fail? Seraphine's smile was cold. Then the bond breaks, and you return to your mortal world. Alone. Elena looked at Lucian, feeling his dread through their connection. This was far from over. When? She asked. Tomorrow night, Seraphine declared. At the blood moon's rise. Prepare yourself, human. The court will not be gentle. As the vampires dispersed, Elena stood in the snow between Lucian and her daughter, bound to a world she barely understood, facing a trial that could destroy everything. But she'd made her choice, and she would see it through. For love. For my family. For the impossible future they might build together. The ceremonial hall was ancient beyond measure, carved from black stone that seemed to swallow light. Pale torches burned with cold flames along the walls, casting shadows that moved with their own malevolent intelligence. The entire vampire court had gathered, hundreds of immortal faces watching as Elena entered alone. The chanting began low, rhythmic, in a language that predated human civilization. It resonated in her bones, made her newly formed bond with Lucian pulse with warning. Lucian stood at the far end beside his throne, forbidden from interfering. Through their connection, Elena felt his fear for her, his desperate wish to stop this. But he couldn't. Court law was absolute. Lady Seraphine stepped forward, resplendent in ceremonial robes of silver and black. Elena Carter, you who carry the king's mark and claim his heart, you must face 3 trials. Fail any, and you are cast out from our world forever. The bond severed, all memory of us erased. Elena's hands trembled, but she lifted her chin. I'm ready. We shall see. The first trial materialized from shadow, 3 vampire warriors, armed and armored, circling her like wolves. The crowd murmured in anticipation. The trial of courage, Seraphine declared. Defeat them, or be defeated. The warriors attacked. Elena had no weapons, no supernatural speed or strength. But she remembered something Lucian had told her during their quiet nights together. True courage is not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. She didn't fight. Instead, she stood perfectly still as blades whistled toward her, trusting the bond, trusting him. The weapon stopped inches from her skin, held back by invisible force. Through their connection, Lucian's power flowed into her, not to fight for her, but to shield what was his. The warriors staggered back, repelled. Courage is not violence, Elena said quietly. It's trusting in what you love, even when everything tells you to run. Seraphine's eyes narrowed, but she nodded. The first trial is past. The second trial formed, a mirror of pure silver that showed Elena herself, but twisted. She saw her future, aging while Lucian remained eternally young, watching Lila grow old and die while she was bound to immortality, becoming isolated, bitter, losing her humanity piece by piece until she was as cold as the creatures around her. The trial of heart, Seraphine intoned. Face your deepest fear. If your heart breaks, you fail. Elena stared at the terrible visions, tears streaming down her face. It would be so easy to run, to choose the safety of her old life, to protect herself from this pain. But then she felt Lucian through the bond, his absolute love, his certainty that together they could face any darkness. And she thought of Lila, already marked by this world, who would need her mother's strength to navigate both realms. "My heart has already broken," Elena said, touching the mirror, "when I lost everything I had and still chose to give my coat to a stranger. When I faced fear for my daughter. When I loved a man I couldn't have." She met her reflection's eyes. But broken hearts still beat. And love doesn't fear the future. It creates it. The mirror shattered into starlight and faded. "Past," Seraphine admitted grudgingly. The final trial rose from the floor, a throne made of ice and shadow, beautiful and terrible, an offering of immortality made manifest. "The trial of will," Seraphine said. "Sit upon the throne and accept transformation. Become one of us fully, or refuse, and leave this place forever. The bond severed, your memory wiped clean. Choose." Elena looked at the throne, then at Lucian. Through their connection, she felt his silent plea. "The choice is yours. I will love you regardless." She thought of her daughter, bearing a mark between worlds. She thought of a vampire king who'd shown her that monsters could choose kindness. She thought of herself, a single mother who'd survived more than most could imagine. Elena sat upon the throne. Cold flooded through her, transforming her from within. Not stealing her humanity, but elevating it, weaving mortal compassion with immortal strength. Her heart continued beating, slower now, but steady. Her eyes began to glow faintly silver blue, marking her as something unprecedented, neither fully vampire nor fully human, but something new, a bridge between worlds. The transformation complete, she rose. The throne dissolved beneath her, and magic fell from the vaulted ceiling like snow, silver starlight that crowned her in beauty and power. Lucian moved before anyone else, dropping to one knee before her. From within his coat, he produced a crown, delicate silver forged into winter roses and thorns, set with stones that gleamed like frozen tears. "Elena Carter." His voice resonated through the hall, thick with emotion. "Will you stand beside me? Not as property, not as subject, but as equal, as my queen." She could barely speak through the tears. "Yes." He placed the crown upon her head, and the court erupted. Some vampires knelt in genuine devotion, moved by what they'd witnessed. Others knelt in reluctant obedience, bound by law, if not by love. But all knelt. Lila was brought forward, her moonlit mark glowing softly. She climbed into the throne beside Elena's, a child between worlds, and smiled up at her mother with absolute trust. The court celebrated, but Elena barely noticed. She only had eyes for Lucian, who gazed at her as if she were the first dawn he'd seen in centuries. Later, when the festivities had quieted, they walked together through the winter garden behind the castle. Snow drifted down, soft and silent, just as it had that night at the bus stop. But this time, Elena wasn't freezing. She was held in immortal arms that would never let her go. "Do you regret it?" Lucian asked quietly. Elena looked up at the falling snow, at the impossible realm she now called home, at the man who'd become her destiny. "I gave you my coat when you were dying. Now you've given me eternity. I think we're even." He laughed, a sound of pure joy she'd never heard from him before. "I love you. I know. I can feel it." She smiled. "And I love you too." They stood together as snow fell around them, two souls bound by the simplest and most powerful magic in any world, kindness freely given, love fearlessly chosen. Somewhere beyond the borders, in shadows they couldn't yet see, ancient enemies stirred at news of the vampire king's new queen. Darkness would come again. Challenges would rise. But for tonight, in this moment, there was only peace. Elena Carter had offered her coat to a freezing stranger, and in return, he'd given her forever.